My name is Doris Meisel, 33 years old. I stared at the letter in my trembling hands, reading my mother's looping handwriting for the third time. Carrie, no. Not Carrie anymore, Doris. I thought bitterly, correcting the ghost of who I used to be. The words hadn't changed. They never would. Doris, your father and I have decided to leave everything to Lucy. Don't expect any inheritance from us. My lips curled into a half smile that wasn't joy, but something colder, the kind of laugh you give when life confirms your worst suspicions. My parents, Margaret and Robert, had always been predictable in their cruelty, dressing it up as duty. This letter was no exception, just one more reminder that in their eyes I had never been enough. As I pressed the paper flat against the table, memories rose like smoke. Grandma Helen's funeral, the smell of lilies, the ache in my chest when they lowered her into the ground. She was the only one in our family who'd ever looked at me like I mattered. She believed in me, and when her will was read 9 years ago, she left proof of that belief, $100,000 each for Lucy and me. I remember the lawyer's office, the blinds half closed, dust motes dancing in the sunlight. My dad kept tugging at his tie like it was strangling him. My mom's fake smile painted on like a mask, and Lucy slouched in her chair texting as though the fate of our family fortune bored her. When the lawyer finished, silence hung in the air like a heavy curtain. Then Lucy squealed her phone, clattering onto the table. Oh my God, I can finally go to that private college I wanted. Her excitement filled the room, while my parents exchanged a glance, tight, secretive, calculating. At the time I didn't recognize it, but later I'd realize they were already plotting how to pry my share away from me. What about you, Doris? What are you going to do with yours? My father asked, voice deceptively casual. I'd been preparing for that moment. Ever since Grandma had grown frail, I'd spent sleepless nights drafting a business plan. I'm going to start my own travel company, I said with quiet certainty. The mask slipped from my mother's face. A travel company, Doris, that's very risky. Wouldn't it be wiser to save the money or invest in something safe? I've thought this through, I told her firmly. I know what I'm doing. My father leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Your sister is going to need that money for college. All of it. Private schools cost a fortune. She got $100,000 just like me, I shot back. Not enough, my mother said sharply, her voice hardening. She'll need tuition books, a car, living expenses. Give her $50,000. That way she can breathe a little. The air in the room thickened. Even the lawyer shuffled papers nervously as if he wanted to vanish. No, I said, my voice trembling but steady. My mother's face flushed crimson. She's your sister Doris. Family comes first. Family comes first for her too, I replied. She can use her own money. That's why Grandma gave us equal shares. If she wanted Lucy to have more, she would have written it that way. Lucy finally lifted her gaze from her phone, her eyes sharp with accusation. You're being selfish. Grandma would want us to help each other. Grandma left us equal because she believed in fairness, I said. She trusted us to carry our own weight. My father shot to his feet, his chair scraping the floor. If you don't give Lucy that $50,000, you're not welcome in our house. Pack your things. You're out. My mother stood beside him like a shadow. We won't have a selfish daughter living under our roof. If you can't help family, you're not family. The words cut deeper than they should have, but I didn't argue. I saw then what Grandma must have known love in this house was conditional. I rose, thanked the lawyer in a whisper, and walked out, my heart pounding with grief and clarity. That same night, I packed my belongings into 2 suitcases and left. No dramatic farewell, no tearful goodbye, just the sound of a front door closing behind me forever. As I dragged my bags into a tiny rented apartment across town, fear clawed at me. But beneath it, a spark of something stronger glowed freedom. They had cast me out thinking it was punishment, but it was the beginning of everything. I didn't know it then, but that moment the refusal to surrender my inheritance would ripple across years, shaping the woman I'd become and igniting a war with my family that still hadn't ended. The first few months after I left my parents' house were the loneliest of my life. My new home was a shoebox studio above a Vietnamese restaurant. The smell of frying oil seeped through the vents, clinging to my clothes, reminding me constantly that I was a tenant in someone else's world. The carpet smelled of old beer, the window rattled every time a bus passed by. Still, it was mine. I would sit on the edge of the bed, staring at the 2 suitcases I'd dragged from my childhood room, wondering if I had made the right decision. At night, doubts whispered louder than the traffic outside. What if you fail? What if they were right? What if you end up crawling back to them? Broke and humiliated. But then I would think of Grandma Helen, of the way she had pressed my hand and said, "You don't have to be what they want you to be, Doris. You can build your own path." Her voice became the anchor that steadied me. I quit my job at the small travel agency within weeks. The salary wasn't enough to justify staying, not when I had a plan burning inside me. I used my inheritance to register my own company, Micelle Journeys, a name that felt both bold and terrifying on paper. The days blurred together. I lived on ramen noodles, coffee so cheap it tasted like burnt water, and the occasional apple when I remembered I needed something fresh. My apartment became a war room, sticky notes on the walls with market research, a secondhand laptop humming on the table binders filled with permit applications and contracts. Sleep came in fragments, dreams haunted by numbers and deadlines. I knew I couldn't do it alone. That's when I met Sarah and Mike. Sarah was a college student with bright eyes and a phone always in her hand. She understood social media like it was her native language, and though she only worked part-time, her ideas on how to get our name out there were priceless. Mike was older, a retired customer service rep who wandered into the office one day because the "now hiring" sign reminded him of his younger days. He had patience, a soothing voice, and a knack for talking to people that made them feel like old friends. The three of us were misfits, but somehow we fit together. Sarah joked that we were like a startup family. Doris, the strict but hopeful mother, Mike, the protective grandfather, and Sarah, the rebellious daughter who taught us all about hashtags. At first, the office was more ghost town than business. I remember sitting there for hours, staring at the front door, waiting for it to open. Sometimes the only visitor was the mailman. Once a salesman tried to pitch me insurance, and for a second, I almost pretended to be a customer just to feel like business was happening. The breakthrough came when I realized I couldn't just rely on brochures and secondhand reviews. If I wanted clients to trust me, I needed to know the places I was selling. So I bought a cheap ticket to Costa Rica with what little was left of my savings. It was a gamble. I spent nights in both fancy resorts and hostels where the beds squeaked if you breathed too hard. I scribbled notes on everything: the friendliness of the staff, the hidden fees, the difference between advertised photos and harsh reality. I wanted to capture the truth, the messy, unpolished version of travel that no glossy catalog ever showed. When I returned, I spoke to clients like someone who had walked those streets, tasted that food, swum in that ocean. I didn't just describe hotels, I compared the firmness of mattresses, the smell of lobbies, the actual distance from beachfront resorts to the waterline. People leaned in when I spoke, their skepticism melting into trust. Word spread slowly like ripples in a pond. Friends told friends, colleagues told colleagues. Clients who had once doubted me returned with stories of amazing trips that matched my recommendations exactly. One evening after closing, Sarah spun around in her chair, grinning at the week's bookings. "We might actually make it," she said. I looked around our little office, our mismatched chairs, the peeling paint, the coffee pot sputtering on the counter, and for the first time since leaving home, I felt something close to pride. But in quiet moments, when the office was dark and I lay awake on my narrow bed, fear still clawed at me. What if it all collapses? What if my parents were right that I was reckless, selfish, foolish? I pushed the thoughts aside, whispering to myself, better to fail on my own terms than succeed on theirs. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I stared at the glow of the city through my cracked window and made a silent vow I would never crawl back. Whatever it took, however long it took, I'd prove them wrong. And in proving them wrong, I would discover who I truly was. By the end of my second year, Micelle Journeys was no longer just surviving, it was breathing on its own. We had steady bookings, repeat clients, and for the first time I wasn't terrified to check my bank account at the end of the month. We upgraded from our tiny office to a modest 2-room space downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but when I saw our new nameplate on the glass door, Micelle Journeys reality-based travel planning, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just pretending anymore. But with growth came risk. I had to be careful. My parents still believed I had vanished into nothingness, and I intended to keep it that way. I couldn't let them find out that the selfish daughter they had disowned was actually thriving. It was around this time that I realized clients didn't just want glossy travel packages, they wanted truth. Real truth. Too many had been burned by staged photos and fake promises, so I decided to go further. One evening, Sarah found me hunched over my laptop editing shaky footage of a hotel room in Mexico. The 5-star resort had mold creeping along the bathroom tiles and a beach littered with seaweed. "You're really going to post this?" she asked, half shocked, half amused. "Yes," I said. "People deserve to know what they're paying for." And so Travel Truth with KT was born. KT short for Kara Thompson. An alias I thought sounded anonymous enough. No face, just my voice and my hands flipping through menus showing receipts panning cameras across hotel lobbies. The channel grew slowly at first. 100 subscribers, then 1,000. But what we lacked in numbers, we made up for in loyalty. Viewers began to trust me because I wasn't selling anything, I was exposing it. Finally, someone who tells it like it is one comment read, "Booked a trip based on your review, and it was exactly how you described. Thank you." It gave me a strange satisfaction, but also a strange fear. Every upload felt like walking a tightrope, sharing enough to build credibility, but never enough to reveal my real identity. The last thing I wanted was my family recognizing me twisting my success into ammunition. Meanwhile, the business expanded. I hired 3 more employees, each with their own quirks and strengths. Mike became our hospitality guru vetting service quality. Sarah ran the digital campaigns. The others handled logistics bookings and corporate retreats. Slowly, we stopped feeling like a ragtag team and more like a real company. But no matter how busy I became, a hollow space followed me. At night, when I returned from trips abroad, there was no family waiting at the door. No sibling to call and share stories with. Sometimes scrolling through Facebook, I'd catch glimpses of Lucy graduation photos, smiling selfies with our parents. Their world looked picture perfect, like I'd never existed. My name wasn't tagged, not even in old memories. It hurt more than I admitted, but instead of wallowing, I poured that ache into something good. The first donation I ever made was small, $5,000 to a women's foundation that helps survivors of domestic violence start over. It wasn't just charity, it was a reflection of my own story. Women cast out told they weren't worth anything rebuilding from ashes. Then I found another organization, one that provided microloans to women in developing countries, another that funded education for girls shut out of school. One by one, I wrote checks. Each time I felt lighter, as if I were repairing something in myself by giving these women the chances I had fought for. I kept all of this private, never telling employees, never mentioning it on my channel. To the world, I was KT, the brutally honest travel reviewer. To my staff, I was Doris, their determined but demanding boss. To myself, I was still a daughter, rejected, trying to turn that rejection into fuel. Then came the turning point I never saw coming. My friend Amanda, who ran the Women's Future Foundation, called me out of the blue. "Doris, you've been one of our biggest supporters. What if we did an interview with you? Share your story, inspire others." My stomach nodded. "No, absolutely not." "Think about it," she urged. "You wouldn't have to share everything. Just enough to show women that success is possible. You could be a role model." For days, I wrestled with the idea. My instinct screamed no exposure was dangerous. But Amanda's words echoed in my head, role model. Could I really hide forever while telling other women to be brave? In the end, I agreed to a simple video interview. Nothing too personal. Just my journey in business, why I started donating, the importance of honest work. We filmed it in her office, the walls lined with photos of smiling women whose lives had changed because of the foundation. When it ended, I felt oddly relieved. It hadn't been painful. No one from my past would ever stumble across it, I told myself. But I underestimated the internet. 2 weeks later, Amanda's team uploaded the interview to their website and YouTube channel. By Thursday, it had 50,000 views. By the weekend, it was nearing 200,000. And on Monday morning, when I opened my laptop there, it was a Facebook friend request from Lucy. 9 years of silence shattered with a single notification. When I first saw Lucy's name appear on my screen, my breath caught. For 9 years, I had lived without a single word from her. She had vanished from my world as easily as I had been erased from theirs. And now here she was, smiling face in her profile picture, arm around some faceless coworker, asking to reconnect. I didn't accept. I didn't even hesitate. I clicked delete. 2 days later, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "Doris," a voice said, trembling. I froze. It was my mother. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, but unmistakable. "Mom," I whispered, the word foreign on my tongue. "Oh, honey," she said, breaking into tears. "Is it really you? I've missed you so much. Your father has too. We made such a mistake all those years ago." I stayed silent, my pulse racing. "We saw your interview," she rushed on, "your success, your charity work. We're so proud of you, Doris." Her words slid into me like honey over glass, sweet, but unable to stick. How did you get my number? I asked sharply. Your cousin Jennifer, she admitted. She thought we should reach out. Of course, Jennifer, the eternal peacemaker, always patching holes in sinking ships. We just want to see you, Mom pleaded. No pressure, just coffee, please. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Some part of me buried under layers of armor still wanted to believe reconciliation was possible. The following Saturday, I walked into the cafe they'd chosen. My parents sat in the corner side by side like they hadn't aged a day and yet aged a decade. My father's hair had thinned his face heavier. My mother's sharp features softened, though her eyes still carried that calculating gleam. Doris, my father said, rising with a strained smile, it's good to see you. I sat down, my hands clasped in my lap. We started with small talk. They asked about my business. My travels complimented my remarkable independence. Their words felt rehearsed, each compliment a brick laid toward something unsaid. Then, just as I was beginning to think maybe they wanted genuine peace, a shadow fell across the table. Lucy. Hey, sis. She slid into the booth beside my mother, her perfume sharp, her smile too polished. She looked older, but not wiser still, carrying that entitled tilt to her chin. My stomach tightened. Of course they hadn't told me she'd be here. We talked for a few minutes, the four of us circling each other with polite sentences waiting for the strike. And then it came. Doris. My mother began softly folding her hands, like in prayer. Lucy has been working at her job for years now. She's ready to start her own business, an online boutique. Lucy leaned forward eagerly. I've done all the research. It's going to be amazing. My father cleared his throat. She just needs some startup capital. About 100,000. There it was. I let the silence stretch, watching their expectant faces. They looked at me the way gamblers look at dice, waiting for fortune to roll their way. No, I said simply. Lucy blinked, her mouth twitching. But you have so much money now. You could change my life. I changed mine because I worked for it, I said, voice firm. I used my inheritance, took the risks, endured the failures. If you want to do the same, do it. But I won't fund it. The air thickened. My mother's smile cracked. Doris, she's your sister. Family helps family, my father added, his tone darker now. Family protects family. I shot back. Where was that when you threw me out of your house? Lucy's eyes glistened, but not from sadness, from anger. You've become cold. Grandma would be ashamed of you. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Grandma gave us equal because she trusted us to walk our own paths. She'd be ashamed of what you're doing right now. The table went quiet. The cafe noise around us, the clinking of cups, the hiss of the espresso machine sounded like background music to a play where everyone had forgotten their lines. Finally, I stood. If this is why you wanted to see me, then there's nothing left to say. I walked out the bell above the cafe door, jingling like a cruel reminder of how fragile hope can be. Behind me, I could feel their stares hurt, angry plotting. They hadn't changed at all. 2 weeks passed after that cafe meeting. I told myself it was over, that they'd finally understood my refusal. But deep down, I knew better. My parents had never accepted no as an answer. The email came on a rainy Tuesday morning. Subject line, legal notice, Thompson v. Me Sell. My stomach dropped. Hands shaking, I clicked. It was from a law firm I'd never heard of. The letter claimed that my parents, Margaret and Robert Thompson, were filing a lawsuit against me. They alleged that I had built my business using family money, and therefore they were entitled to a substantial share of Maisel Journey's profits. I read it 3 times, each word carving deeper into my chest. They were suing me. After 9 years of silence, after pretending I didn't exist, after disowning me. Now they wanted my life's work. I dialed my lawyer, David Chen, with shaking hands. David, I need you, I said. My parents, they're suing me. What his voice snapped with disbelief. What are they suing for? They're claiming I used family money to build my business. But you used your inheritance, he said firmly. Money your grandmother left specifically to you. Exactly. Bring everything tomorrow. Wills, contracts, business records. Doris, from what you've told me, this is a frivolous case. They don't have a leg to stand on. The following morning, I sat in his office, surrounded by files. David scanned the papers, his brow furrowing in concentration. They're desperate, he concluded at last. But don't underestimate the emotional toll. Lawsuits like this aren't just about money, they're about power. He was right. Within days, my phone began buzzing with calls from my parents. Sometimes my mother's voice trembled with false warmth. Doris, can't we settle this quietly? Other times my father barked threats. You'll regret humiliating us in court. Help your family or face the consequences. Lucy showed up once at my office, her eyes wide and pleading. Doris, please. I know Mom and Dad can be intense, but this isn't just about them, it's about me. I need this boutique. I need a future. You had the same start I did, I told her coldly. What you've done with it is your responsibility, not mine. When she wouldn't leave, I called security. Watching her escorted out was a wound and a relief at the same time. The trial began on a cold February morning. I walked into the courtroom with David at my side. My parents sat at the opposite table, Lucy behind them, like a silent soldier. Their lawyer looked smug, as if victory were already assured. When the judge called the case, their attorney rose dramatically. Your Honor, my clients contend that Ms. Meisel's business was built using family resources. She had no right to keep those profits exclusively. Then came their bombshell, a letter allegedly written by Grandma Helen, stating that she had left me the money only on the condition I would share it with Lucy. My breath caught. My mother's face remained steady, but I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, fear, perhaps, hidden beneath layers of bravado. David requested the letter be entered into evidence. Then he rose smoothly, his voice calm. Your Honor, this is a forgery. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Ms. Meisel has dozens of authentic letters from her grandmother. We request handwriting analysis immediately. The judge agreed. The trial continued. Lucy took the stand, claiming she had been Grandma's favorite, that they shared countless moments together. David leaned forward. Can you provide photographs? Letters, anything to prove this closeness. Lucy hesitated, stammered. Well, no. I didn't keep those things. Interesting, David said dryly. Because my client has over a dozen photographs with her grandmother spanning years. She also has letters in Helen Thompson's authentic handwriting, encouraging her business dreams. Why would a grandmother supposedly closest to you leave no evidence of affection? Lucy's face reddened, her voice cracked. She loved me, she did. But the jury didn't look convinced. When it was my turn, I spoke about Grandma, how she encouraged my independence, how she believed in my vision, how she trusted me with equal footing alongside Lucy. By the time the handwriting analysis returned, the case was already unraveling. The expert confirmed it. The so-called letter was a blatant forgery. The judge's gavel struck like thunder. This court does not take kindly to fraudulent evidence. Not only is your claim baseless, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, but you have attempted to deceive this court. Case dismissed. All court costs and legal fees are to be paid by the plaintiffs. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. My parents sat frozen, their lawyer pale as chalk. Outside, the winter wind bit against my face as I stepped down the courthouse steps. My parents were waiting, fury etched into every line of their faces. You'll regret this, my father snarled. We'll tell everyone you're a fraud, my mother hissed. That you pretend to help women but won't even help your own sister. Lucy's eyes brimmed with tears, angry, not broken. This isn't over. David stepped forward, his voice steady. Actually, it is. And if you harass my client further, you'll face a defamation suit. Trust me, you can't afford to lose another case. The silence that followed was louder than any shout. Finally, they turned and walked away. For the first time in years, I felt taller than them, stronger. But deep inside, I also felt something else, sorrow. Because even victory in court couldn't heal the truth, my family would rather forge lies than face who I'd become. 6 months passed. The echoes of the courtroom had faded, replaced by the hum of my business thriving louder than ever. Meisel Journeys had just opened its 4th location, and our subscriber count on Travel Truth with KT had crossed 2 million. Each milestone felt like a stone stacked on the fortress I had built solid, unshakable mine. My parents, meanwhile, were silent. No letters, no calls, no late-night ambushes at my office. For the first time in years, my phone didn't tremble with the weight of their demands. Then one evening, my cousin Jennifer called. Doris, she began gently. I thought you should know your parents are struggling. I leaned back in my chair, letting her words settle like dust. The lawsuit drained them, she explained. They're behind on Grandma's mortgage. Things are bad. She hesitated. Your mom asked if you might consider helping. A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Help them after everything. I told her it wasn't a good idea, Jennifer said quickly. I just thought you should hear it from me. I thanked her, hung up, and sat in silence. Once the thought of my parents losing the house would have gutted me. Now it felt like justice, not the vengeful kind, but the natural kind. Choices had consequences. Still a small ache remained. Because beneath the anger, beneath the betrayal, they were still my parents. And part of me still mourned the family I'd never had. Life, however, had given me a different kind of family. Sarah, now a full-time partner in the business, had grown into a fierce young woman, her ideas sharper than ever. Mike still dropped by, his calming presence grounding us. And then there was Marcus. Marcus owned a small tech company. We met at a networking event, both of us skeptical of the forced smiles and business cards flying like confetti. But his laugh was genuine, his questions thoughtful. When I finally told him about my family, the inheritance, the betrayal, the lawsuit, he didn't flinch. You did exactly what you had to do, he said. Success doesn't come from handouts. It comes from fire. With him, I felt something I hadn't in years understood. Sometimes at night, when the city lights shimmered outside my apartment window, I thought about the roads I hadn't taken. What if I'd given Lucy that $50,000? What if I'd stayed under my parents' roof, swallowing their rules, dimming myself to fit their comfort? I knew the answer. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have built a company, traveled the world, or donated to women who reminded me of myself. I wouldn't have found freedom. My family had taught me a lesson they never intended. Blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does. Respect does. Love that wants to see you rise, not drag you down. That's what family is. And so, when Jennifer called again weeks later to say the bank was preparing to seize Grandma's house, I felt no guilt in saying, "I'm sorry, Jennifer. That house never protected me. It's not my burden to save." I ended the call and went back to work. Because the truth was, my parents' downfall wasn't my tragedy, it was their choice. They had spent years plotting against me, and in the end, they had only ruined themselves. As for me, I slept just fine at night.